Everybody eventually realizes if they want to have that return,
Yeah.
they have to go all in.
Absolutely, you do. Like, I have to take this seriously. We cannot play around here. Going onto YouTube for me was inspired by not only teaching people the technique of Tunisian crochet, but also having this regular generating side income. There are definitely niches that are more lucrative than what I've gone into. So I have to find that return in different ways. So I picked up crocheting as an adult when I was having trouble finding a job. This was an opportunity for me to feel productive, or like my talents, I was using them for something. YouTube gave me a chance. Eventually,
Toni Lipsey is a YouTube creator with 900,000 subscribers, known for her beginner-friendly crochet tutorials and modern designs. Since turning her passion into a career over a decade ago, she's built an extensive catalog of patterns and instructional videos, inspiring a global community of makers.
when I first started, I was just focused on education. No matter how well I teach about a particular stitch, if people are just not interested in that, they're not going to watch the video. I realized that like the purely educational content is not going to get me as far as it had been before.
There's a whole world, especially in like the rise of like AI. There's so many beautiful art forms. If people like you don't talk about it,
right,
it's gonna die.
It'll just fade away. If you're gonna come into the craft space, especially, which is already so niche, it's like you have to find that thing that differentiates you, and it's going to be that's the thing that's gonna
You turn your crochet passion into a business well over a decade ago. At what point did you realize that this hobby could actually be a business for you?
Yeah, it was kind of an odd transition because it did start out as this hobby of like just something to fill my time while I was looking for work. And then when I finally found work, it stayed a hobby for a while until I started getting people asking about, well, where can I find your stuff? Where can I find you? Do you have a shop? Is there somewhere I can come see you and your items? So then I started selling at craft shows. And that's kind of the first opportunity for me to call TL Yarn Crafts a business. Because otherwise I'd just been making things for friends and family. Maybe I'd offer an item or two to a consignment shop, but there was never an opportunity for somebody to come to a physical location and see my pieces. And once I realized like, oh, there's actually a market for this, I can raise my prices, I can use more quality items. And I started thinking like a business person as opposed to a hobbyist. That's really where the transition happened, because I started answering different questions for myself. Instead of saying like, oh, I'd really like to use this yarn because it looks like fun, I'm saying, oh, I'm going to use this particular yarn because it's keeping my costs down and it wears well and the average person can throw this in the washing machine. Like your mindset totally shifts. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to, if I'm going to make this a business, I have to start thinking about it like a business. It's not just that it's generating income. It's that I'm moving in this intentional way to say, okay, I am running a business now, and maybe I can get it to a point where it's fully self-sufficient. But at that point, it was still very much a side hustle. Like it was just, I was dabbling. I was dabbling for sure.
Hobbying or dabbling. So then where does YouTube fit into the picture?
Oh, YouTube didn't really come in until kind of down the line. I would say TL Yarncraft started in 2013, mostly with like physical items. Then I moved into writing patterns or teaching classes at local yarn stores. So still things that required like a physical presence. And it wasn't until I visited a yarn convention and I learned this new technique, new to me at least, technique called Tunisian crochet. And then when I got back from the convention, I started looking up resources because I wanted to continue my own education in this area. And there just wasn't a lot out there. And I think that's one of the first times where I was like, okay, I'm seeing a hole in this industry, in this market. And I'm like, maybe I can fill that. Maybe I can start making the resources that people need to at least get an exposure to this technique. So I learned everything that I could over the course of about a year. And then I started my YouTube channel in 2017. My very first video, The Absolute Beginner's Guide to Tunisian Crochet, has well over 1 million views. Still one of my highest viewed videos because it really does get you in on the ground level of this technique. And even all these years later, there are lots of makers who haven't heard of this before. So they're seeing it for the very first time and they can still use that resource. So YouTube really became an opportunity for me to grow my reach and access people who hadn't heard of this technique before. Because I mean, it was still relatively new to me. But I was like, I can at least tell you what I know so far as I continue my own education.
And so did you see that success early on? Like, did it immediately take off for you, that first video?
it took off in a form of success that it was my own definition. I think in the broader sense, it was a start. But to me, the fact that I got more than like 100 views on this video was a big deal. You know, when you're
Yeah.
just starting out, proof of concept, like the bar is very low.
Yeah.
It's very low.
Which is a good thing, actually, because I think sometimes even now when people are spending all this time studying and studying YouTube and have all these expectations on it, and if they don't hit it out of the ballpark in the first even 5, 10 videos, sometimes that's when a lot of people quit.
Definitely. I mean, there's a level of humility that you have to have when you're first creating content, because I look back at some of my old videos, and while the content itself is good, the information is good, the production was like something that definitely needed to grow, and I needed to scale that in a big way. But you know, having that humility when I first started showed me that like there is some opportunity here and I can push forward. And one other thing that I did very early on that I think helped with my success is I didn't just put up one video and sit there and cross my fingers. There was a strategy to it. There was a 5-part video series specifically on Tunisian crochet. So I started with like the basics and how to do it. I talked about color work. I talked about shaping and some other more technical aspects. And then I finished with an actual project. So if somebody wanted to take that series step by step, those first 5 or so videos that I put on YouTube, you could nail down this concept with just those videos. And I think it helped because the videos all kind of fed back into the first one. So if you stumbled upon how to change color and you're like, wait, what is even happening here? You could always just go back to the beginning and kind of start that series over. So I think that helped a lot with kind of getting a bit of traction. And then by posting weekly and really focusing on that Tunisian crochet concept, I was able to start building that validity of being that person that you come to learn this
Authority on
basic technique.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you had that strategy of that 5-part series, did you upload them like simultaneously, like day after day, or like what was the actual strategy that you
Yeah.
did?
So the strategy was every 3 days. I wanted
Okay.
to give a little bit of time. So there was a lot of research that I did early on. And one of the things that I learned about was like, you know, your videos kind of start cooling off or so about 3 days. You know, the reach that you've got, the amount of comments and those kinds of things, it starts to taper off a little bit. So it's like, if I can keep the content coming every 3 days or so, I'm not overloading people. I'm not overloading my site and not allowing a video to breathe and kind of get its own traction before I put something else up. So every 3 days for those first 5 videos. And then after that, I then transitioned to once a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the first 5 videos, and I'm assuming you pre-filmed them and everything. You weren't like sitting there and like, okay, I got to film the next one. I got to film the next one.
No, the series was really about 2 months or so in the making. So everything from like, what project am I going to make? What yarn am I going to use? What am I going to say? What do my intros look like? Like I was very methodical about it. I didn't want to test the videos per se there on YouTube. I wanted to have the entire concept nailed down so that the videos really flowed super well into each other and that I wasn't talking about a particular concept in video 4 that we hadn't covered in video 2. Like I didn't want it there to be that disconnect. So it was very intentional, like every single part of it, the way that the lighting was done, the outfits that I wore, the angles that I did, and even the sound of it all, the audio was like a huge part of things. Cause in my early research, what I found out is like, you can have a video with like pretty dismal visuals, but if your audio is strong, you're going to get a little bit further as opposed to vice versa. Cause I do have a couple of videos out there where the audio's not great. I took them down, re-recorded them, and now those videos are starting to perform. So thankfully, when I started out in about 2017, there was a good amount of research that I was able to look up before I started. So I didn't feel like I was just guessing as I was going into this really big project because it was a big investment. I got a new camera. I got microphones, lighting, you know, it wasn't the highest tech setup, but it was a step up from just like using my phone and like a lapel mic. Since I was going for that authoritative, you know, positioning,
Yeah.
I wanted to try and step it up a little bit even from the very beginning.
Yeah. So when you launched your channel at this point, because I know the TL yarns and kind of what was going on was a side project,
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
a hobby business.
Mhm.
So when you launched your YouTube channel, was that still a side business at that point, and the YouTube was like still like a side hustle?
For sure. Yeah,
Okay.
so YouTube, when I first started, it was actually just after I quit my day job. So
Okay.
Yarn Crafts has always had a lot of facets. YouTube didn't come in until I knew I would have the free time to invest into it.
Yeah.
So I was working my day job, having a really great experience there. And then I also had this collab opportunity with this very large yarn company that I was super interested in working with. So that was kind of the catalyst of me deciding to quit my day job and go into TL Yarn Crafts full time. And then starting my YouTube channel was inspired by one, teaching people this technique, but also two, having this passive income opportunity. You know, I'm freshly into running my business full time. I know that I'm not going to be able to sustain myself by teaching classes and maybe selling patterns. I needed something that would generate an audience on a regular basis. Going onto YouTube for me was inspired by not only teaching people the technique of Tunisian crochet, but also having this, you know, regular generating side income, you know, for all the other things that I'm doing within my business, because design and teaching was kind of the number one part of my business. And then sharing information on YouTube was to kind of bolster all of that. But it very quickly became kind of an overarching opportunity within the business. You know, I still release patterns and I still teach, but YouTube is really kind of like the number one income generator. And it is the thing that uses the most energy within my business just because the return is, I mean, you can't argue with those numbers.
Yeah, and that was my next question. So at what point did you actually start seeing an ROI from your YouTube channel? Actually, before you asked that, I was just super curious. What was your job before doing this? What was your day job?
Yeah, so I got my degree in nonprofit management after school, and I, you know, worked in different nonprofits over time and really got into volunteer recruitment in my last job, working with the Red Cross, and then I transitioned to working for my local airport in their HR department. So it was always recruitment. It was always, you know, looking for the opportunity to provide, you know, different positions for people, finding those links between like what somebody wants to do and what they're good at versus, you know, what we have available. So I always loved kind of piecing that puzzle together. And I think that's why it has worked so well for me in this craft business, because I'm looking at, okay, what are the opportunities that are out there? What are the things that I enjoy and like to do? And how can I bring those together? So YouTube made a whole lot of sense for me because, I mean, obviously I like to talk. I like to teach. I like to share about the things that I know. And I like to engage with community. So the community that I built on YouTube through my comment sections, through my community tab has really helped drive the channel because crafters are incredibly vocal about what it is that they want to see. They know where their education gaps are. And they're like, Toni, you're great at this. We love listening to you. You're very detailed. Can you tell us about this? I'm like, okay, you want to know about this? So I'm going to learn everything that I can about it and share it. And thankfully, the return happens. Like people come and look for that content. So I really focus a lot on that kind of beginner, like people who are entering into the space to kind of help build their confidence to then continue their education either through my channel or through others.
Yeah, that's so great. So going back to my question, you know, when you first started your channel, I love that you were so strategic with it because you know, because I work with a lot of creators and YouTubers and I help launch channels and what I found is that you have to have the mindset similar to what you had and be committed to YouTube. It's like, I mean, there are people that, you know, they'll kind of like hobby it, but everybody eventually realizes if they want to have that return that they see people talking about, like that actual passive income stream, they have to put the time and energy into it and have that like full level of commitment and strategy and like in some ways go all in.
Absolutely. You do. Like you can't really have one foot in, one foot out unless you're like wildly popular on some other platform and you come to YouTube
Or
and
you're
you have
famous.
that kind of baked in audience. But for a lot of us, myself included, when I first started, you know, my name was known in these really small niche areas. And if I was going to have the presence on YouTube that I wanted, I really did have to commit. I had to focus on like not only the big ideas and the concepts that people wanted to know about, but the little things like tags and descriptions and titles, like the things that get your video even in front of someone before they even can hear what you have to say. So it was very important to me that if I'm going to quit my job, take this full time, like I have to take this seriously. We cannot play around here. So, you know, I would say as far as return on investment, it probably took Oh gosh, somewhere between like 6 to 8 months for me to
Mhm.
really feel like all the time and effort that I was putting into it was generating the income that I felt I deserved.
Mhm.
And that I think was probably for a few different reasons. I was a very small channel starting out. I didn't even hit like 100,000 subscribers till well over a year. It took quite a while for me. I'm working in this very niche market, and I was working not even just the crochet space and the craft space, but like drill even further down to Tunisian crochet, which a lot of people didn't even know about.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I want to make it big off of this concept that no one's heard of. How can I make that happen? So it took a lot of grinding on other platforms as well to be like, hey, I'm doing this thing over on YouTube. Go check me out over there too. So I had to
Mm.
bring my audience along from other places to get the momentum on YouTube that I was looking for. And then outside of that, it was a lot of playing around with like my marketing on YouTube. So like when I first started out, I did not put my face in my thumbnails. I was not at that kind of confidence level yet to be like, okay, not only do I know what I'm talking about, but I am now also the face of this brand. I
Mhm.
really just wanted the concepts to speak. And it worked for me when I first started out. I think there has been a turning point now where people do come to my channel to spend
For
time with
you.
me specifically. But early on, when I was really focusing just on the education side, really just putting the concept out front and not myself, not centering myself made a lot of sense. And that worked into the strategy early on. If I can give like one piece of advice to anybody starting a channel is you have to stay flexible because the rules change constantly. What worked for you last summer might not work for you this summer. What your audience was asking for, maybe during the pandemic is not what they want now 5 years later. Like you have to
Mhm.
stay flexible with what your audience wants and also what is performing well on the platform.
How did you learn that, or did you learn that the hard way?
Absolutely, I learned it the hard way because I like I would kind of like play a strategy essentially to death to the point where like I would do the same thing that I was doing, 3, 6, 9 months ago. And the performance was just not there. And I'm like, okay, we have to change something. And
Mhm.
thankfully, YouTube has gotten a lot more generous with their analytics. So it's
Yes.
a lot easier to see from video to video or from quarter to quarter what has worked and what has not. So between really staying in tune with those analytics and then also, polling your audience every now and then, or, going into those other platform spaces and see what conversations people are having to be like, okay, I can answer that question. This is something that's huge for my niche right now. I can insert myself here. Like you kind of have to keep your eyes and your ears open to trends and opportunities in your space to kind of jumpstart it, again, if you're kind of on that downward trend.
Well, I know you said, I mean, actually, you said it took you a while to get that first 100,000, but honestly, to get 100,000 in your first year is actually quite good.
Is it?
So,
I think I set the bar really high for myself. I kind of
yeah.
always have because part of the reason for that is like when I left my day job, like I left a job that I loved. I left a
Mhm.
career that I was building and I was happy where I was. So if I was going to make this transition, I was like, it has to be better than what I left. And that was a really high bar to set. So like when I set my goals, it was like I want to reach 100,000 subscribers in 9 months and I want to be making X income at that point. I want to be working with this many brands. Like it was pie in the sky. And I was like, I'm going to strive for this as hard as I can because eventually I was like, I don't want to go back to a day job if I don't have to. And
Yeah.
my mentality was like, I need to grind heavy in these first several years to really then allow myself to coast a little bit more
Mhm.
once I've kind of fallen into a rhythm of like knowing how this all works. I was still so new with it that I was like, I just gotta, like you said, both feet in, like just really immerse myself in the experience. And thankfully it paid off. It doesn't for everybody. And I think it's really cool to see so many new young YouTubers, especially young Black females coming into the craft space. There's not a lot of us. And even when I started in 2017, I can't think of one other YouTuber that was making videos consistently in the craft and crochet space who looked like me.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a more of a trend of like different bloggers, vloggers, and creatives like myself in this space. But then again, there ends up being a little bit more competition, and you're fighting a little bit more for people's attention,
Yeah.
and which is a good and a bad thing. I think for me, I've always looked at competition as like a great thing because now I can niche down even more and be like, okay, now there's more of us doing the same thing, but what is going to be the one or two things that they only come to my channel for? So it's a welcome challenge for me to always be kind of like pushing that envelope a little bit more of like, what else can I do to differentiate myself within this space that's getting, progressively more crowded?
Well, and that's the beauty of like being really consistent and just sticking with it because part of, I'm sure, what your audience, and you said this earlier, comes to you for is your personality, the way you
Mhm.
engage with them, the way you talk, the way you explain things. So
Yeah.
that's what the beautiful thing is about YouTube. And that's why I do believe like everyone can kind of find their space because as long as they're kind of themselves and they're authentic, like the people that connect with them are going to connect with them.
100%. I think it's so important, and especially for like people who are younger in their channels that I talk to, I'm like, you have to let your personality sink. You have to let it out. You can't come on this platform like being too serious or like too scripted, because there's tons of channels that people can watch.
Yeah.
And I think about some of my favorite channels like your Brad Mondos and your Bailey Syrians,
Yeah.
and there's even like a local gal here named Kenny JD, and everything that they have in common is they have a very specific personality. Like,
Personality.
I go to their videos when I'm in a particular mood. Like, that's what I want to hear and that's what I want to see. So I'm like, if you're going to come into the craft space, especially, which is already so niche, it's like you have to find that thing that differentiates you, and it's going to be your personality. That's the thing that's going to be consistent video to video, even as you're talking about different things, or like we were talking about, you're pivoting between different types of content styles. Like when I first started, I was just focused on education. I was teaching stitches, techniques, concepts, which is still necessary, but like YouTube doesn't prioritize that anymore. No matter how well I teach about a particular stitch, if people are just not interested in that, they're not going to watch the video. So now I've transitioned a little bit more to like kind of wrapping my education up into like this more casual vlog style tutorial where it's like, I'm going to take you through how I made this sweater, and in little different points I'm going to talk about some technical pieces that make my sweater stronger than maybe just the pattern or just like, this first garment that I made. So it's that personality that shines through, and I think a lot of younger creators, you have to get that confidence up in front of the camera to be like, yes, people are here for me and they want to hear what I have to say. It takes a while to develop that. I know that from my personal experience as well, because my early videos, oh girl, I was like a blank sheet of paper. I'm not even joking. Like, it was
Yeah.
not it was not there just yet. But you build that confidence over time, and that consistency, like you're saying, plays a huge part in that.
Yeah, because the more you create, the more comfortable you create. That's what people always say, like, well, how do you get confident in front of the camera? It's like, honestly, you just got to keep doing it.
Spending more time in front of the camera. Yeah. Because it's not like, I mean, unless that's your personality, it's not a very natural thing to do. To
Uh-huh.
just like, I can chit chat and gab with my friends all day, every day, but you sit a camera in front of me, like my whole, the persona changes. I'm like, this is going to be around forever. How do I want to present myself? But once you spend enough time in front of the camera, you get to know yourself a little bit better. You get to know your audience a little bit better. It just starts to flow a little bit more. So like that, it's practice. Just like anything else, you have to practice being in front of the camera.
Yeah, and I know that for you, especially with the type of niche that you have, because you launched your channel, what was it, 2018, you said? 17? So, and I know, that you had mentioned that COVID was a time where for a lot of channels, but for yours, I know you saw some really great
Mass,
momentum.
for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you alluded to this earlier, but then I know that there are a lot of channels that I've worked with and people I talked to that they had that. They had that growth during the pandemic, right? Especially something like what you're doing. But then they're kind of on the other side of it. And
Mhm.
so you alluded to the fact that like, yeah, things change, you have to adjust. So take us through that and what happened in
Sure.
that time
Yeah.
for you.
So like, I mean, COVID was it was an amazing time for my channel,
Uh-huh.
and I always feel really weird saying that because I was like, it was awful for all of us, but you had to find the bright spots.
Yes.
And I think my channel was a bright spot for some people.
Uh-huh.
So I used that opportunity to kind of capitalize on this trend of people trying hobbies for the first time. We're all at home. We got nothing to do. Maybe I'm going to take up crochet. So I did a lot of like, again, I kind of taking it back to my roots for my channel, focusing on beginner techniques, really simple projects, using yarns that were easily available. So I kind of got back into that education side of things. And then also answering the questions on a slightly deeper level. Cause like early on in my channel, it was, very quick, short videos, 8, 10, 12 minutes of like this quick concept. Well, I have a captive audience now, people who might not have an issue watching a 20 or 30-minute video if it's really going to give them everything that they need. So there was this kind of beautiful little bubble we were in where we could kind of shirk the rules that we were all working with at the time because the audience was there. So fast forward to, 2025, people are squarely back to work. They're moving on like the pandemic never even happened.
Yeah.
So as a content creator, I'm like, okay, I don't want to lose this entire audience. I know there are some people who like crochet was their pandemic hobby and they're not going to come back to it. We've reconciled that. But there are some folks who are now, like this is a new thing and kind of part of their identity now, and they want to learn more. So there are definitely certain topics within this niche that come up regularly. So I use that as an opportunity to say like, hey, here's another tidbit of information. So like making garments is a really big concept that happens because, coming out of the pandemic, and especially a lot of younger makers, they're not so interested in making like tea towels and curtains and, all the kind of cutesy, like crafty things. They want to make dresses and sweaters and like backpacks and like really these practical, gorgeous things that you can wear and use. So I'm like, okay, now we're shifting away from I'm just teaching you the concept to more like I'm teaching you construction and I'm teaching you how to, make garments that fit your body, or I'm teaching you the concept of like why you should use cotton for this piece as opposed to wool, and like really getting down into the technical side, because now that we've gotten away from some of those like very beginner, pandemic focused topics, the people that we have now, the attention we have now are people who are like, we're in it to win it. Like we are crafters now, and I need to understand these very particular concepts. So while early on in my channel, I was not talking about wearables and garments, I now have had to make that pivot to be like, okay, this is the conversation now. And how can I continue to be part of that conversation and be a thought leader in that conversation? So I've had to like, up the garments that I make. So like even the sweater that I'm wearing right now, this was like one of my first, sweaters that I made for myself, but I learned a lot. And while I'm not necessarily an expert on making sweaters, I can at least share what I've learned. And I think people appreciate that perspective because they're also not experts, but they're learning things along the way.
Well, a lot of times people forget that are on YouTube is that they're like, well, I'm not an expert in this topic. So it's like, but someone like you and somebody that's been on the platform for a while, you are an expert at creating content. So there might be people out there that know a lot more than you about garments, but they have no clue as to creating content. So they're not going to be doing it on YouTube. So somebody has to, and it's you, the content creator, right?
Absolutely. I think one thing that you have to get like really comfortable with is like inserting yourself into the conversation. Like you can't wait for someone to like tag you in or like tell you like, hey, we're ready to hear from you. So like even when it came to garments, one of my first pieces of content I made was like, I made my first sweater and this is how it went. So it's not me saying, here are 5 things that you need to do when you make a sweater. It's here are all the mistakes I made. Here are all the things that I messed up. And I'm hoping you learn from me so your first sweater doesn't stress you out this much. So it's entertaining to watch, but there's also educational pieces that you take away from it. And so like by creating that content and continually building on my own skills, I'm able to share, these little tidbits with folks. So yeah, I'm really comfortable in front of the camera and I have no problem kind of looking like a goofball and making mistakes and learning things as I go. And I think that makes folks feel a lot more comfortable to be like, hey, you know what? I could probably do this. If she can bumble her way through this, you know, like I can probably make this work too. And I don't mind being the guinea pig, you know, it's
Yeah.
fine for me.
And was there a moment where, like, post-pandemic, you were kind of doing something and then you realized you had to pivot? Was there a moment where, like, maybe views were down or maybe
Oh,
the
sure.
income you generated was down?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the pandemic kind of era content worked for me until about the end of 2021.
Mhm.
So like 2020, we're still figuring it out, and I was kind of sticking with my old strategy for a good while. And then by the fall, which is like peak content season for my
Mhm.
niche, like fall
A
winter,
lot of niches, yeah.
yeah, it's huge. So I was like, you know, by the fall, I was like, okay, now I need to really cater to these beginners. These people have now finally figured out we're going to be in our houses for a while. And now you're finding a way to pass the time. So fall 2020 through about Christmas time 2021, my twilight, it was fantastic. But like January, February is always a really tough time for my channel.
Mhm.
Things always just tend to dip. People are
Yeah.
getting back to, you know, other things. Many of us might have gone back to work at this point. So that's when I realized that I needed to pivot. And that's when I realized that like the purely educational content is not going to get me as far as it had been before. I was watching some of my favorite channels because I draw a lot of inspiration for my channel very far outside of my niche. You know, I'm
Uh-huh.
wondering what's happening in the beauty space or in the food space, what's happening in the technology space. And they were starting to move slightly away from like that purely educational content and more into the vlog style or like the personality driven content. So I was like, okay, maybe I can make that happen on my side. And again, I'm looking around my niche and I'm not seeing anyone else doing this. We didn't have a lot of like very casual vloggers talking about the projects they're working on or the places that they've shopped or the, you know, yarn based events that they've gone to. And I was like, maybe
Yeah.
I can provide that perspective because now that we've solidified who's going to stay a crocheter and who's not, now let me expose them to like what this entire hobby could look like. It's not just sitting at
Yeah.
home crocheting, but there are like
Like the light.
cruises you can go on. Yeah, there's conventions you can go to. There's groups you can be part of and local yarn stores you can visit. Like you can really immerse yourself in this craft as deep as you want to. And it's just providing a perspective that people didn't know about before. So that was kind of the first major pivot to be like, you know, we've taught you the beginner stuff, but here's everything else that you can do with it.
Mm, that's so interesting. And I love what you said about bringing inspiration outside of your niche.
100%.
I
Yeah.
always tell people that, like, you can't be on YouTube and not be a consumer of content on YouTube.
100%. Yeah. I would say like at this point now in 2025, as far as like content consumption, I'd say like 80% of it for me is on YouTube. Like I'm not only am I entertained by it, but it's research for me. You know,
Yeah.
if I've got like an idea coming up, like, you know, how can I share like this really big concept? Like one thing I'm working on right now is a video on how to teach people how to read patterns. So this is a very technical skill that you need to learn if you're going to continue to grow as a crocheter. And it's difficult for people because to a degree, it's kind of like learning another language. There's abbreviations and punctuation. There's a lot to it. So I'm looking at my peers in other niches to be like, how are they tackling these really big concepts in a way where you don't end up with like a 90-minute video.
Yeah,
You're
and it's
not boring
boring.
people to tears
Mhm,
and
yeah.
you're not getting so deep in the technical weeds
And
that like
lose
only this
people.
small portion of people care to be taught that way. You know, I've found that for my audience, there's a combination of like humor and lightness and levity that has to go with the technical watching or they just glaze over. So you know, I've used that research that I've gotten from watching other niches to be like, okay, this is something that might work here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's so good. So you only, other than, and I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, if things have changed. So you started, you're doing videos like every 3 days at that initial part, but then since then you've only been doing one video a week?
Yeah, well, you know what's funny? So I did one video a week from like 2018 to about 2024, and I
Uh-huh.
actually just made the transition to a video every other week.
Oh, okay. Tell us
Yeah,
about
so
that.
I've cut back a little bit on the schedule
Interesting.
for a couple reasons. Like I
Okay.
was doing a video every week and it was doing okay, but considering that I have lots of other things going on with TL Yarn Crafts,
Uh-huh.
squeezing in a video every week was very challenging. And
Uh-huh.
batching my videos was just not a really viable option for me. So what I realized is by doing a video every other week, I'm able to go a little bit deeper. I'm able to talk about these bigger topics because I've got a little bit more breathing room to like write scripts and come up with concepts and to actually do the production. And then I can take that 2 weeks in between videos and start to like pull different like reels and shorts and things out of that content. So I'm able to now utilize that short form content that's performing incredibly well on YouTube as well to then bring people back to that larger concept. So like for this video that I'm going to do around reading patterns, there's lots of different topics within there and like little sound bites that I can make and people be like, oh, now that that clicks and makes sense, they're like, okay, I want to know more. So let me go watch the full like 20 or 25-minute video. So YouTube's made it very easy to use that short form video to then funnel people into your long form content. So I feel a lot more confident releasing those long form videos every 2 weeks with reels and shorts in between, because then it gets people back to that video. So thankfully, I haven't seen any adverse effects for my long form videos with this new strategy, but we are only like 2 months into it. We're still testing.
I wanted to ask, how did your audience respond to that?
Yeah, it's been about 2 months so far, and it's going incredibly well because now I'm able to like hit some of those bigger topics, the videos that people are actually interested in making. So like, for example, when I was doing once a week, I might release a video about like something small, like how to weave in ends. That's really niche. That's really specific. It's a quick video, but like, that's not necessarily what people are coming on YouTube for. Now that I'm doing videos every 2 weeks, I'm able to do like, you know, larger product reviews, or I'm able to like take people on a local yarn store tour, or I'm able to now do this video on how to read patterns, like some of that foundational knowledge that I want people to build. So I have a little bit more latitude, a little bit more space creatively to do the type of videos that I really want to, on top of, you know, teaching at local yarn stores and creating patterns. And I run a membership. Like TL Yarncrafts has always worn a lot of hats, and I don't want to stop doing that. So I've had to like turn the knob up on some things and down on others. But it's kind of become this really lovely like quality over quantity thing for me. And YouTube thankfully has not dinged me for that. If anything, I'm feeling a little bit more rewarded because those strong videos get a little bit more opportunity to breathe. I can really market them on all my different platforms, and they're getting that constant traction, and also encouraging a whole lot more conversation, because like just explaining a concept in an 8-minute video is not going to get the same engagement as like, you know, reviewing this really lovely yarn from like Denmark, you know, like it just ends up being way more interesting that way.
Yeah. So are you finding part of this strategy is creating shorts from that content, and then, you know, that short, those viewers will come over. Are you finding that the people that are watching the shorts are coming on to the long form?
Yeah, they certainly are. And one thing that I noticed is like the folks who are watching the shorts are a bit different than the audience who normally watches my long form videos. The way that shorts are advertised to us in the mix of like, you know, different topics that we get in our shorts feed, very different than what you might be recommended on like your YouTube For You page, right? So I'm able to reach a different type of person, which is sometimes great and sometimes not. You know, you kind of have to manage that. So we're blending these two audiences, one audience that I've, you know, cultivated over years of being on YouTube, and this other audience who just happened to find my video in their shorts feed. So it's been kind of a lovely like mishmash of, you know, my audience, thankfully. And this is one thing that I take a lot of pride in. They get the vibe. They know what I'm here to accomplish, and they really manage that chat section in a way that I could not possibly do on my own. So, you know, if you get the folks who are coming over from shorts and, you know, maybe not putting the nicest things in the comments, or like, you know, asking questions that are clearly answered in the videos because they're not watching the whole thing, you know, I don't necessarily have to go back and say like, hey, check out this timestamp. My audience will do that for me. They are like my ride or dies. And I think that's part of the reason that I love being on YouTube so much, because even though I'm posting videos every other week, there are now people who look forward to my videos every other week. I'm on a schedule now that people can look forward to. And they also advocate not only for me, but also for what I'm trying to create there on YouTube. They're very protective of this space because they know that I'm here to provide for my community, because I was a community member. Like, I learned to crochet through YouTube and through Etsy and through books, through these other creative communities. So people are very protective of that. So we're like, if we don't have folks like Toni and, perhaps Elise and other people that you've interviewed constantly sharing this knowledge, crafts like this disappear.
True.
So
Yeah, that's
it's so
true.
important that we continue to make this content.
Yeah, for the younger generations and stuff, right?
Exactly. Like that,
Mhm.
because we know that, your teenagers and your 20 somethings are not necessarily going to the library like me or my mom or my grandma did to learn these
Mhm.
crafts. They're going
So
to
true.
YouTube and social media. So, we're not going to let, folks kind of come in and sully that, because this content is so important.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a whole world, especially in like the rise of like AI and stuff like that.
Mhm, mhm.
There's so many beautiful art forms and like crochet, right? Certain things like that that are just been part of humanity and just part of cultures. And if we don't have, and that's actually, you touched on like one of the big reasons why there's so many reasons why I love YouTube.
Yeah.
One of them is being able to like promote women like you, right? Women that are just talented, and of all women of all shapes, sizes, backgrounds, right? It's
Yeah,
just, it's like
absolutely.
this place that anyone, if they've got the gumption, right?
Yeah,
And willingness
absolutely.
to do it, they can be out there. And like you said, like when you when you joined YouTube, you didn't see other women that looked like you. You didn't see other women of color like you. But
Mhm.
you taking that leap of faith,
Yeah,
you're now giving the space and even maybe the confidence for other women that are similar to you to do it. So
definitely.
that's one of the amazing things. But the other part is like what you were saying is too, is like this art form that if people like you don't talk about it,
Right.
it's gonna die.
It'll just fade away. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, these crafts mean so much to people, and the stories that
Mhm.
I've heard about, like, I was in this place in my life. I was just out of a divorce, or I was, had this illness or this transition in my family, and I took up crafting as a way to like keep myself busy, but now it's become like this thing that I go back to like help me self-regulate and like, build my
Emotional.
confidence. Like, it is
Mhm.
not just about the yarn. It is not
No.
just about crocheting. For people, this has been a savior, and in a lot of ways it was for me as well. I picked up crocheting as an adult when I was having trouble finding a job. This is like 2010. We're going
Oh,
through like
wow.
one of our first, financial recessions of my adulthood. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I got into crafting as kind of like a release after spending all day looking for jobs, which is a job in and of itself.
Mhm. Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah.
this was like a welcome break. This was an opportunity for me to feel productive, or like my talents, I was using them for something. So, I come from this place that a lot of my audience or my students do, of like, crochet saved some part of me. It
Wow.
came at a time when I needed to lift myself up and to like reinforce that I am talented and I am confident and I can do things. And, either coming out of the pandemic or even beyond, people have their own reasons for coming to this craft. And sometimes it's more than just like, I needed something to do, so I feel this compulsion to be the person that makes space for like younger YouTubers, younger designers, younger educators in this space. Because if you don't see yourself, you don't feel like you belong there. And
Yes.
we have this talent to share. And that's one thing that I've loved about YouTube, and the way that it's propelled my brand forward, is YouTube gave me a chance by having that barrier to entry be so low. And really, your success is built off of everything that you put into it. Eventually the return happens. If you continue
Mhm.
to grow in your production, in your content, on your concepts, if you're willing to share your personality, engage with your audience, like, the return will happen. But you really do have to put all of that time and energy into it. It's for a reason that's much bigger than just, how many views you get on your video, or, how much you get back in your Google payments. Like, I would say that the income that I make from YouTube, while necessary and helpful, pairs in comparison to how valuable I feel like my contribution to this maker community has been. That's really what I feel like I continue to do it for. Because if it was just about, making an income, we could all just throw up, AI generated, I don't know, murder podcasts. Like, I mean, there are definitely niches that are more lucrative than what I've gone into. So I have to find that return in different ways.
Yeah. And I'm sure for you, and it sounds like you have a wonderful and beautiful community. It's like the comments you get is like further confirmation and validation that you did make the right decision, or that you are in that, that feeling of you wanting to contribute to this
Yeah.
community. You're constantly getting the validation that like, okay, I'm doing that. That, it probably feels really good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely it does. Like I mean, I with so much going on, I don't get to enough time to spend in my comments as I would like to, but like people are really generous with not only their praise, but also their personal experience through the comments. So I'm able to hear the stories of like how a concept that I shared has encouraged somebody to move forward with a pattern that they thought they weren't, skilled enough to do. Even something like that small confidence boost, like that permeates somebody's life, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
feel that confidence of like, okay, I can now do this craft or this concept that I thought I couldn't do. Maybe that makes you feel more encouraged, on your job or within your family, or to have that conversation or to try that other thing. It builds in this really beautiful way. And that's why I always encourage folks to like, not only do you need to find a hobby, but I always encourage folks to find something to do with their hands, because that tactile reinforcement of like, wow, I just turned this thing into this other thing, it just builds you in a way that you really can't quantify.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so good. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk business.
Sure.
So where does YouTube fall into your overall business model and business structures? Because you've kind of like mentioned like there's other platforms you're on,
Yeah.
you sell patterns, you teach things. So give us an idea of like what your whole business structure looks like and
Mhm.
where YouTube fits in with that.
Yeah. So the overall goal of TL Yarn Crafts is to teach people how to crochet, to teach them how to crochet and how to love crochet, right? So, by teaching in-person classes, I get to do that. By writing patterns, I get to, give people the technical writing to be able to create this thing. But YouTube kind of plays this really special part in that not only can I teach people how to do something, but I can teach them how to enjoy it, how to share it with others, and how to, grow it in this really creative and beautiful way, because everybody's path looks a little bit different. So like business wise, YouTube is definitely kind of the main priority for TL Yarn Crafts. It's something that I bake into my schedule. I have a very specific production schedule that I build around my bi-weekly videos. That's how I can make them cover like these kind of broader, larger concepts without like, having to spend every day of that full 2 weeks preparing for that video. So, business wise, it's the highest. I kind of put the most energy towards it because it does have kind of the biggest return. I can then share it out on my other platforms. I can work it into my in-person teaching. So like, for example, maybe I create a pattern, but then by creating a YouTube video on how to like do different technical parts of that pattern, and then I can link it in the pattern, and then the person who's making it has a much higher success rate in actually completing it, right? So that's one way that YouTube feeds into the pattern writing side. On the in-person teaching side, I might go into a local yarn store and teach a pattern and then be like, hey, if you need some further education, I have a full step-by-step tutorial over on YouTube. So then what I say in class is then repeated in that video.
So when you say class, is this an online class, like membership that you're selling, or
So a
what do
lot
you
of
mean by
these
that?
are like one-off teaching either in local yarn stores or
Like
like
in
through.
person?
Yep. So like
Okay.
I travel around the country, and very soon it'll be around the world to teach classes at local yarn stores. There is like a network of like, I want to say at this point it's like over 5,000 local yarn stores in the US alone.
There's that many yarn stores?
Oh my gosh, you would be surprised. And some of them are like really teeny, and that's why we specifically call them local yarn stores. Most of them are quite small, run by like one or two people with maybe, a very small staff. They're
Yeah.
in strip malls, or they're in, just on main streets, and
Random.
I'm sure you've driven past one and had no idea. Like
Yeah.
they're hidden in plain sight all over the place. So thankfully I get invited by these shops to come in and teach classes. And
Because
because
of
of
your YouTube channel, I'm assuming.
Yes,
That's how they know
often
of you.
because of my YouTube. That's how people find out about me. And now
Okay.
that I'm feeling a lot more confident centering myself in my YouTube channel, people are asking for me specifically. It's not
Yes.
just, we want somebody to come in and teach this crochet concept. It's we
I
want
want
TL Yarn
tone.
Crafts to come in.
Yeah.
And I've also kind of roped my mom into a lot of that teaching with me for a couple different reasons. My
Yeah.
mom, I absolutely adore her. She is like a New York girl through and through, and she infuses this beautiful, like, comedy and levity into the teaching because I can get really technical. Like that's where I live. Whereas mom is like there to remind people that we're here to have fun and like enjoy ourselves. So we're kind of a tag team now. And when we go and teach, people want to take photos with us. They want me to sign my book that I created, and they really, really look forward to taking our classes together. So yeah, it's teaching in person at these local yarn stores that I
Wow.
get to travel.
Okay. So are you getting paid for that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. So
For sure.
who pays you? The store or the people coming? Or like
So
how
the
does that
people,
work?
yeah, so the people coming pay for the class.
They pay for the
And
class.
I always, so the way that I've set it up and to make it the most fair is like I have a flat rate that I
Okay.
charge for my time, whether I'm teaching in California or I'm teaching in like Idaho. It does not matter.
A
So
flat rate
then
for
for the shop. So
for
that's
the
what the
shop.
shop
So the
pays
shop will
me.
pay you,
Yep.
right?
So the shop will pay me. I do not interact with the students as far as their payments. And what
Okay.
this does, though, is by having that flat rate and being able to share it with the shop, they can then decide how much do I need to charge for this class to then
Yes.
make the return for my shop. And
Yes.
that is their business to handle. I do not have anything to do with that. So, some places my class might be $40. Other places my class might be $120, but it is
Yeah.
the same class.
Yeah.
So it just really depends on, what the shop needs.
Wow. Okay. So cool. This is so cool. So out of curiosity,
Yeah.
what is that flat rate for the shop?
So my flat rate for the current year is $125 an hour.
Okay.
And then I also request that they, of course, pay for my travel. If I'm going to be
Yes.
there for multiple days, they're going to, take care of meals and lodging,
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. But it's just that flat rate. And depending on how
I
many
mean, that's
students they're
pretty
going to
good for the store. That's not bad at
tell me
all.
about it. Listen,
I thought you were gonna say a lot higher than
I
that.
know. And it could be, right? Like I've thought about that as well. I
Yeah.
could be charging more because, for my reputation and I think for the level of education that I provide, the rate could be much higher. But that's where YouTube comes in, right? I am able to generate income in lots of different places, which allows me to share a more reasonable rate with local yarn stores because depending on the store, they're not going to have the resources to fly me in and put me up and pay me for being in the classes.
Yeah.
So by keeping that rate low,
Yeah.
I'm able to then still provide that service, but on the back end, I'm working this passive income from YouTube and from my membership, from my PDF patterns. That is what sustains my business. So like teaching at local yarn stores is not, that's not how I pay my bills.
Yeah. What's percentage of your total? It's so cool though, because I'm sure for you, I feel like gosh, there's like so much more I want to ask you about. Because you're very business minded, which I love, and so I can imagine for you doing this is almost like you get to actually bring your YouTube channel to life and meet your subscribers. And you also probably get so much, you personally probably get so much out of it from connecting with your subscribers and also even like getting ideas from them and all these really cool things.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like going to the local yarn shops, like spending that face-to-face time with my audience it's a huge value for me outside of monetarily, right? So I get to connect with folks. I get to find out, they're like, well, if you could make a video on this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that idea back and work that into the schedule. And so that feedback is so valuable. And, like I mentioned before, this audience in particular is incredibly vocal in the things that they want because the roadblocks that we hit as crafters are like very tangible. They're saying like, I don't know how to do this specific thing. Can you teach this to me? And I'm like, sure, I can do that. No problem. So going out to the local yarn stores and particularly going to different regions of the US, like I'm able to meet crafters from like the Pacific Northwest, as well as like, they might want different things than my crafters down in Texas versus, my crafters up in Canada. So I'm able to like kind of extend out a little bit further, what I thought people needed and really hear back from folks what it is that they actually want to see.
Yeah, and is everyone pretty much there? They're there for you. Like when you go there, it's like you're like a mini celebrity. They're like, "Oh, Toni!" Like, do you get that vibe?
The energy is high. The energy
Oh,
is
how
very
cool!
high, and thankfully,
That's such a cool high for you as a creator.
it absolutely is, because like
Mhm.
there is an energy around this, and there is a love and a joy that I have for this craft that you can only experience that with other people who like get it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
being in a room of other people who have spent as much time in this craft as you, and we're able to bounce that really positive, amazing energy off of each other, and it creates this safe space for you to just really nerd out on craft. Like
Uh-huh.
it's not for everybody. Love him to death. My husband like understands about half of what I say when it comes to crocheting, right? So I have to go to the spaces where my people are to like be able to talk about what it is that we talk about. So it's a beautiful exchange of energy, and it also builds a lot of trust, because like I am able to then listen to what it is that they enjoy about my channel and what it is that they want to see. Or like they'll say, oh, I just watched this one video and you wore this, or you were working with this project bag or whatever. So like it's this beautiful exchange that I love to have, and you only get that in person. So as much as I love having a YouTube channel and being able to share that information and interact virtually, teaching at local yarn stores and going to see my subscribers face to face is something that is absolutely necessary for the health of my channel. It's how I stay connected with my audience. And that's really why I do it. So the rate is like, it's just enough really to cover my costs, because in all actuality, by the time I leave a local yarn store,
Yeah,
I probably spent all the money that I earned, like I'm buying yarn
it's
and
fine
needles
yard.
and books and things. So like, it's kind of a net zero, but
It's the experience.
the actual income is from like that exchange of energy and ideas in that space.
Yeah, and is that like a thing? Is there a lot of YouTube creators, or do a lot of these yarn stars host like classes like this?
There's a few. I would say there's kind of like maybe like a handful of us that travel around. So there's not a ton. I would say like when I first got invited to teach at a local yarn store outside of the ones that I was teaching at, like in my area, that was really a big deal. So like for somebody to like fly me out,
A
that
big
was
deal
not
for
the
you, or a
fastest
big
thing.
deal for like the industry or
I
the
would say
yarn
for the
store?
industry, yeah, because like
Okay, okay.
especially once the pandemic hit, everything went virtual. And I think that was one of the biggest jumping off points for people to get comfortable teaching, period, whether it's teaching in person or virtually, because a lot of us hadn't done it at that point. So I got really comfortable with teaching virtually over the pandemic, and I essentially said yes to everything, because I was like, when are we going to have a time like this
Yeah,
again? Like I really felt
that's
like
smart.
I needed to harness that time. And I'm glad that I did, because then I started to cement myself as somebody you can reach out to come teach at your shop. I also got really heavy into Tunisian crochet when I started my channel, and I continued with that concept. So I became an expert in that space. I literally wrote a book about it. So part of my book tour was teaching at local yarn shops, putting myself in front of people, signing the books, taking the pictures. Like I wanted people to associate me with crochet specifically. I was like, this is my thing. I do it all the time. I love it. I live, breathe, and eat this stuff. So now that I am scaling back ever so slightly on my posting schedule, it's not affecting like my reputation at all. It's
Yeah, because
not
you're
that
still
I'm not.
giving so much to the
Yeah.
community.
Exactly. So I give in lots of other ways. So like my membership, we started back in January of 2024. And that's part of the contribution of like why I'm scaling back a bit on YouTube, because I'm giving so much to this community as well. But again, because everything feeds into everything else, part of the perk of being in this community is that you get to access the YouTube videos without ads, right? So I'm able to double dip a little bit on this content side, and then also like further immerse people into the realm of TL Yarn Crafts through this exclusive membership.
Okay, yeah, I want to talk about the membership. One last question about the in-person thing. How many people on average are usually in one of those like yarn events that you do?
It really depends as far as like the student size. So like for my very beginner classes, I usually will do like a slightly larger class, maybe somewhere between like 30 to 40.
Oh,
Because since those concepts are so basic, it's easy for me to kind of jump around throughout the class. And I think it's also easier for people to pick it up. So I don't get quite as many questions. And I also typically bring my mom with me. So I've got an extra set of hands. As we kind of increase the difficulty level or like dig a little bit deeper into the concepts, the classes are usually a little bit smaller, maybe somewhere between like 15 to 20. But often when I go do these events as well, not everybody wants to take a class, right? So I might also have like a fireside chat or like a book signing, or just like a little meet and greet for people to still drop by, take pictures, meet each other, chit chat for a bit without having to sit through like a 2 to 3 hour class.
Yeah. I love how something like YouTube that is a very like virtual thing, how it just brings people together.
It really does.
Like, and for all those people that come to your events, it's like they get to meet you, they get to like nerd out, and then they might make friends and meet other people in their neighborhood that are into that stuff.
That is just one beautiful side effect of these experiences, because often when I go to do these local yarn store events, like I'll advertise through my, personal platform.
Yeah.
So that might be somebody's first introduction to that store.
Yeah.
So, now that store has gained a customer, that customer has met other people within their community who are very interested in this. So they might come to like a knit night or some kind of like yarn event. So it really is this just far-reaching community building opportunity. So I get a lot out of it. The store does, and the customer does. Like everybody,
win-win-win.
Yeah,
Win-win-win. That's we all love a win-win-win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. So the membership, is that a YouTube membership that's through YouTube, or is this a separate kind of membership? Like, tell us about the membership.
Sure. So the membership is called the Yarn Hive Community. And I definitely did consider doing it through YouTube because when I was first kind of coming up with this idea, that was when YouTube memberships kind of got launched. And as interesting as a concept as it is and all the capabilities that YouTube has, there were some things that I wanted to be able to do within my membership that I wasn't able to do through YouTube. Like I wanted to have this really big community aspect where people could like upload their projects and like ask questions or share what they're working on. So I created it on a separate platform. But what's nice about it is like we have all these different channels within the membership for people to have all these different conversations. So like one of the channels that we recently introduced is called Snuggle Buddies, because craft people are very interested in their pets. So we have like a whole channel for you to show like how you're doing your yarn thing and how your pets are interacting with it. Or we have like an entire channel called Pattern Support. Is there something that you're stuck on? Is there a concept that we can explain? So now instead of just me being the person who answers the question, we have an entire community who are invested in making sure that we all grow in our craft. We had like a 12-hour yarnathon where like I was on, I was on Zoom for 12 hours solid. We watched a movie together. We stitched together.
No way.
We had a scavenger hunt, which was very, very fun to see. So I would say
like your phone with you, like walking around, like how do you do that?
I'm stationary, right?
You're
but
there.
The people who were participating would have to like go around their space and like find something green or like find something squishy or like whatever, it was kind of like a fun interactive thing. And we did prizes and there was trivia. And so it's this whole opportunity again to connect with each other, but then also like have this active participation in this community, which is really cool. So, with any membership, you participate to the level that you're comfortable with. So I would say there's a good like 25% of our community who is there like daily. They're checking in, they're replying to comments, they're, making requests and like sharing their projects.
And is it in Slack, or where are you housing all this?
So I work off of a platform called Uscreen.
Okay.
So Uscreen primarily works with fitness memberships. That's kind of their main thing. So like yoga and trainers and stuff. So I'm actually their first craft channel. And funny enough, we've been tapped. So TL Yarn Crafts and my team have been tapped a lot to like test different features or like, try things first because, there's the fitness space they don't use all the features in the way that we might. So like
Yeah.
they recently added like a messenger system
Uh-huh.
and you can kind of toggle that on and off, but I absolutely want it on because again, that's a way for me to connect with my audience and find out what they need from me.
Uh-huh.
So you know, we're able to be somewhat pioneers in that space to really cater that space to what we need. We've made a lot of requests about like, okay, we need to be able to, you know, upload videos and put them on a calendar so people can look forward to them. We need to be able to like create multiple channels because we talk a lot. Like when I first got on the platform, you could only have 10 channels. So that's only 10 different
10
conversations.
different conversations. Yeah.
Not nearly enough.
Yeah.
So now we have unlimited channels. And it's just that advocating on behalf of my community to really build the space that I've always envisioned. And thankfully, Uscreen has been very amenable to that, probably because I send them like 5 emails a day. You know, you got to be persistent about these things. But
They know you. They're like, there's Toni
I
again. Like,
know,
hey.
right? And the audience is always growing, right? Like I'm always bringing new people into my membership. So we just started in January of 2024 and we now just passed 1,000 members in the membership.
Wow.
So like it's the growth is, I mean, it's undeniable. So my platform
Wow.
is definitely investing in that continued growth. So I've really enjoyed it in that space too, because it really is an opportunity for like the super fans to kind of
Oh,
have
yeah.
this kind of smaller niche space for themselves. Yeah, it's really cool.
So cool. And then it's a month to month membership, or they can buy it yearly, or like.
Yeah, they can buy it yearly, and if you do, you get 2 months free,
Yeah.
or you can do month to month. We start with a 3-day trial, and with that trial, you get access to
Everything.
everything. So not only do we have this really beautiful community side, but we also have like a pretty intense like video side of things. So that's the opportunity for me to bring like my YouTube videos in, but I also have like lots of exclusive content for my membership as well. They get access to PDF versions of my patterns, which outside of purchasing them, there is no place else that you can get access to my PDFs. So that's like a really big perk for them. And we also do live streams on a weekly basis. Like my mom is very involved in that space as well. So like it's for the people who are like really ready to go to the next level with TL Yarn Crafts. And we do have like a very fanatical audience, which is beautiful because I feel the same. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I invite people to bring that big, excited craft energy into the space. So we really just kind of all feed off each other.
What's the price of the membership?
So the membership right now is $14.99 a month. We're actually going to be increasing. Yeah, $14.99 is really reasonable. Since we
Yeah.
were still brand new, we didn't want to like go too crazy.
Yeah.
So we kind of scaled it up, right? So the first 3 months we were in like a beta. So it was just $11.99 a month. When we got out of beta, we moved to $14.99 a month. So that's been pretty much the last year, the last 12 months. And we're just about to reach our 1 year anniversary, not including the beta. So like April 1 is our 1 year anniversary. And that is when we're going to scale up to the $17.99. And the goal is to leave it there.
Yeah.
So like based on the size of our audience, because like everybody who's already in it, their prices are not going to change.
Yeah. They get
Which is
grandfathered in. That's kind of what I have
exactly.
in mind too. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like a really lovely thing that Uscreen offers because I wouldn't want to, because I know we would lose people. Like that would become financially not an option for some folks.
I like giving people like I'm a like a very loyal person, and it's like you're with me at the beginning. You get to get
Yeah,
grandfathered into like
exactly.
this. I mean, yeah,
Like as long as you stick around, you know, and
exactly. You leave, then you give that up.
definitely, yeah. If you leave, like I'm sorry, I don't know.
I say that too. It's like you can come back, but you
Yeah.
lost your that
And
right.
one thing that Uscreen recently offered is like you can put your membership on pause for like it's a limited amount of time, but you know, if hardships happen or maybe you're, you know, just not going to be available to participate, you can put your membership on pause and still maintain, you know, whatever level that you're at price wise. So yeah, we're going to be going up to $17.99 a month, but we're also adding additional features, including like exclusive workshops. We're going to have a speaker series and have other experts in the space come through. We're going to have more live events and, you know, it's always building because I just have this pie in the sky idea of like TL Yarn Crafts really being the haven of like all things crochet and not just me. There are other people who excel in this space that I would love to bring in who know more about different niches within crochet than I do. And I'm like, why don't you learn how to make like amigurumi dolls and like cute little dolls from somebody who does that regularly? That's not my thing. I can't be the expert in everything, but I know people. So let me give you a space to kind of learn those things. Yeah.
So cool. Okay, so then you got your membership, in person, yarn stores. I'm assuming you've got YouTube, AdSense.
Mm-hmm.
What are your other income streams?
Yeah. So like I have PDF copies of my patterns on my website. I also sell merch. I have exclusive merch for the membership and then also general merch as well. I get the income that comes from YouTube. I also have a blog that I've been running since 2014. So even before I quit and was doing YouTube full time, I was sharing things on my blog, and that is thankfully and also surprisingly just continuing to grow. Maintaining a blog right now is so difficult, and I think the consistency and the longevity that I've had mine, I'm really able to like submit myself as an authority in that space. So, thankfully it's still working out in my favor. I wrote a book, so I get residuals from that. Um, I think that might be it. I think that's
Wow.
everything.
That's it,
Yeah.
Tony? That's it? I'm like,
Oh, I forgot.
dang.
I also collaborated with that company out in Denmark to release 2 lines of yarn. So
Oh,
I get a
cool.
lot of affiliate income from that, which is really nice. And then just like one-off collaboration and things to like help promote products and things. I don't one of the things I stopped doing is I don't really take sponsorships on my YouTube anymore.
Okay,
And
word.
the reason being is like I generate enough income in that space and other spaces that I just don't really want to do that. I feel like, at least for my videos, having a sponsor and taking that 30 to 90 seconds out just kind of pulls you a bit out of the experience. I don't want to give people an excuse to click off. So I don't do sponsorships on my YouTube channel anymore, but if I do sponsorships, I usually will share that over on my social media channels.
Gosh, it's so you do so much. I love it. So it's so impressive. I'm like, wow. Um, like say you have like a pie, right? What percentage of your total income is from each income stream?
um High level, I would say like 25 YouTube, 25 blog, which like even that number is really surprising to me how
Yeah.
how well my blog performs. So 25 YouTube, 25 blog. I would say after that it's all kind of broken. I would say 10, 10, 10. So like 10 from teaching at local yarn stores, 10 from like affiliate income, 10 from the book, 10 from, oh my gosh, like even like reels and like social media income.
What
That's
about membership?
trying to pick up the membership. So the membership is a little bit tricky
Uh-huh.
because since it's still relatively new and we are generating a reasonable amount of income, I haven't kind of taken that into huge consideration for the larger pie just yet, because a lot of that money either gets funneled back into the membership or like is used to pay my team.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason that we're also increasing the price of the membership, is to like really start generating some income that I can
Uh-huh.
use from that, some money I can start putting away. This
Yeah.
last year has really been an investment of like understanding what it means to keep that platform afloat.
Uh-huh.
So right now it's not generating return in the way that we would like to see just yet, but with this
Okay.
1 year anniversary coming up, there have been some changes. So that probably won't become part of the bigger pie until we finish out like this next year.
And then with the YouTube, are you finding that you're getting the majority of the new members from YouTube or your blog, or are you using ads or anything like that?
Um, it ebbs and flows. It's always been important to me to keep that space relatively small compared to my other platforms. So, like, I have a Facebook group that was kind of like the springboard into the membership, and that Facebook group has 25,000 members in it.
Oh, okay.
So when I first introduced my membership and I was going into that beta period, that first 3 months, the only platform that knew about the membership was Facebook, because I wanted to
Mhm.
bring those really strong fans into the space first to
Yeah.
really like test it and build it into what we wanted it to be. So now I do advertise in other spaces. I don't have any paid advertising, but like when I mention my membership in my YouTube videos, we often will see a spike, right?
Yeah.
In new members, or like if I mention it over on Instagram, we'll see a little spike. So the advertisement strategy is pretty thin right now, only because I don't want
You
that
don't want
space
to
to like
overwhelm it.
blow up. Yeah, because what we've built in that space right now, this really lovely community where we like recognize names and we know people's pets and their kids and we know where people live, like that, you start to lose a bit of that when there's too
Mhm.
many people in the space. It's just too much to keep straight. So, ideally we'll get that space up to maybe like 4 or 5,000 over the next several years,
Mhm.
but there's not this big push to like grow too big too fast.
And your team,
Mhm.
tell me about your team. Like, how big is your team? How many people are on it? What do they do?
Yeah. So I'm really proud to have like an all female team. And so I currently have a business manager, Lisa, who is just, she's so dynamic. She comes from the tech space. Her research skills are amazing. She's just kind of shifted it over to craft. I actually converted her to being a crocheter, which is really cool. So she can now use that passion and that perspective of being a crafter to like
In
really
your
help
business.
us like find trends and like she does a lot when it comes to doing like my tags, titles, and thumbnails. So she does a whole lot of that. And then outside of that, she touches every part of the business. So there's the business manager. I have a virtual assistant who helps a lot with like fielding community messages. She manages our inbox. And then she also does a lot of like pattern support, either inside or outside the membership. And then I have 2 moderators for my membership. And then that's my whole team. That's what I've got going. So I still keep a lot of it on my shoulders, mostly because I'm a bit of a control freak on this like creative side of things. I ran my business solo for a very long time. I have a very clear vision of like what my voice is and how I present and what I want TL Yarn Crafts to be. So I keep a pretty tight hold on a lot of the creative expression of the business. And my business manager, my virtual assistant especially, kind of handle um I don't know, just the things that I don't have time for, you know.
Yeah.
They manage my schedules and they handle my emails and, you know, do a lot of communications and kind of keep me on track. My business manager handles a lot of the advertising and marketing within my business. Because as much as I would love to write all of my own newsletters, I just do not have the time anymore. So, you know, there's these little creative things that I've had to let go of, which is really difficult, but it frees you up to do all the other things that you want to do. And I think that's how I'm able to maintain having so many hats within TL Yarn Crafts, because I don't want to give any of that stuff up. So I've had to bring on people to help with the load.
Do you do your own video editing?
Most of it still.
You
Yeah,
still
I know.
do?
Most of it still. So here's the thing, right? So like my more technical videos, I have somebody who helps me with that because she works with like a simpler editing style.
Okay.
But for things like my vlogs or things that are a little bit more like personality driven, again, that creative side, I have a very clear vision of what I want that to look like. Now, I am open to having an editor to do those things. I just have not found the right person to like realize the vision yet. But I would love to. So if anybody's listening and edits vlogs, like hit me up.
Yeah. And how did you find the other women on your team?
Yeah. So, my virtual assistant is the first person who came onto my team. She was actually another teacher at a local yarn store that I was working in. So I just, you know, you have to mind your, you know, your communities for these people.
Yeah.
My business manager, I found similarly, I was doing a collaboration with another crocheter and she was the business manager for that person. So she and I had opportunities to communicate by like coordinating meetings and things. And she just basically reached out and was like, hey, I always thought you had somebody helping you with this. If you need someone, let me know. So that's how that started.
Wow.
And then as far as my moderators for my membership, similarly, they were both members of my Facebook group. And I was like, hey, you contribute a lot here. You seem to really enjoy like answering questions and staying on top of the conversations here. Would you be interested? So all of these people, of course, do get paid. We have like regular meetings together and they understand like very specifically what it is that I'm asking of them. One of the things that was important for me once I brought on a team is like, I don't want to have to babysit adults. You know, if you have a very specific list of tasks this week, I should be able to look up on Friday and see that you've marked off all those boxes. And I'm also very cognizant of like not putting too much on folks' shoulders because since for the most part, this team is like my virtual assistant, you know, works from home and she has young kids. So I don't put too much on her plate. Or like my business manager, I mean, this is her full-time job. So like, I'm very cognizant of like how much time people are giving to TL Yarn Craft. So I don't make those lists too long for different people, but it's always manageable. And if people are, you know, really self-motivated, you know, the relationship seems to work really well. So thankfully I've had all these people on my team for like a good while. Both of my moderators have been there since the beginning of the membership. My business manager was the one who actually encouraged me to start a membership because before that, I never thought that I didn't think I had I don't know, that untouchable thing, like that unquantifiable thing to be able to manage a membership. But she was like, yes, you absolutely do. She's like, it's the same reason you still have a YouTube channel. You are your business and people come for your personality. And if they have an opportunity for greater access,
Yeah, they'll
there's
pay
always
for it.
going to be people who want that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So true. And then where does your mom play a part in this whole thing?
Yeah, so my mom's the one who actually taught me how to crochet. She's
Mm.
crafted her entire life. So when I got into crochet, that was a big opportunity for us to spend more time together. And then when it transitioned into a business, I mean, she just became my biggest cheerleader. She's always been a huge encouragement for me. So when I wanted to teach more at local yarn stores, I asked, I was like, would you be willing to come with me to this? Just be
Yeah.
an extra set of hands. Because what happened is the store, we were originally just going to have 15 people in the class, and that first 15 sold out in like less than 24 hours. So we wanted to add more students. And I was like, well, if
Yeah.
we add more students, I'm going to need some help. And they didn't have any help to provide. They didn't have any staff who could help. So that's when I pulled in my mom for that first class. And she was phenomenal. And I got to see my mom in a whole different light,
Oh,
just like
that's so cool.
it was so beautiful. And as an adult, to really start to see these different sides of my mom and like how passionate she is about all of this as well, and how different our personalities are.
Yeah.
We're two fully fledged people, and I adore this woman. We are quite different in a lot of ways. But it complements. So, it kind of becomes like this yin and yang thing of like, people come to me for the really technical side of things and like the teaching and the breaking it down. Whereas mom, like I mentioned, it provides that comedy and that levity. And
Yeah.
she's just really sweet. People just love my mom. They just do.
Yeah.
It
I
takes like
like your
5 minutes to
mom.
be around her. She wins people over very fast. So what we realized as she and I started teaching more of these classes together, she loves to travel. I didn't really know this about her because I mean, she always worked. She's retired now. And so this is an opportunity for her to start seeing the country and seeing the world a little bit. So we're able to go teach these classes. We can have more students. But then she can also, kind of contribute to the business and see different places. And we'll usually go to like if we went to Seattle for this big teaching opportunity. So we'll usually go either a day early or stay a day late to just
Just
like experience
explore.
the city and just go hang out. So yeah, it's got a lot of pros to that relationship.
Fun. That is so cool. And what a cool way for you to be able to spend that quality time with your mom.
Yeah.
Like,
It's beautiful. It's
yeah,
something
as an
that I know
adult.
if I hadn't have gone into this career, it's just maybe a part of our relationship that wouldn't have developed, even if crochet would have just stayed like a hobby for me, there's a lot of depth to this relationship we've now built because we get to spend so much one-on-one time together. You learn a lot about somebody when you travel together. So,
True.
it's something that's grown beyond just like mother-daughter, and it's like a true friendship, which is like really beautiful and something that I don't know if we would have had otherwise. So
Oh, I
it's really
love that.
cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So what's next for Tail Yarn Crafts? Like what do you envision like, in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now?
I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like I've touched a lot of the things that I can do within this business. Like I wear all the hats. So if anything, it's like taking it all up a notch. So like the collaboration that I did with this company to develop these yarns, yeah, we developed these yarns, but what other yarns can we develop, or what other projects can we do together? What other colors can we add to the palette? I teach at local yarn stores. I'm like, well, I've traveled a lot around the United States. What other countries could I explore? Like, turns out there is a huge crochet community in Brazil.
Oh,
Yeah, same. I
okay.
had no idea.
Yeah, cool.
So, my audience has started to expand internationally. So I'm
Yeah.
like, how can I have some FaceTime with people in Brazil or Australia or the UK? I wrote one book already, and I'm trying to sort out like if I have another book in me, is that something I want to do? Because a lot of people don't know this, but that was my pandemic project. So while I was growing TL Yarn Crafts externally through YouTube and my blog and, social media, I was also writing a book on the side. So that book ended up coming out in December of 2021. It's been a few years now. Typically in the craft space, you're coming out with a book maybe every other year. I gave it a little breathing room because I wanted to expand in other areas, but maybe I want to, check out publishing again. So there are a lot of opportunities ahead of me. And what's nice about, running your own craft business is you can take it in any direction that you want to. So right now it kind of feels like sky's the limit. And I feel incredibly blessed that I can kind of write my own ticket. The interest in working together with like different companies, yarn stores, yarn producers, all the opportunities are there. It's really just about which one I want to seize, and it's kind of a cool position to be in, but it's also a little nerve-wracking because I'm like, whatever I spend time on, maybe we'll take a little bit of time away from other things. So it's kind of a balancing act to figure out where I want to grow, because that might involve like having a smaller stake in something else.
Do you think you'd have all this if you didn't make that decision to start your YouTube channel?
Oh, no, no way. YouTube has been like the catalyst, I would say, for the growth and also the reach of TL Yarn Crafts. There are living rooms that are watching TL Yarn Crafts that I never would have been able to reach by teaching classes, writing patterns, having a blog. There's no possible way. And I think too, TL Yarn Crafts has grown because I have grown and gotten more comfortable in front of the camera and figuring out what my voice is. By actually having to speak to people and respond to people and interact with people through YouTube. So I would say like YouTube was one of the first things I did after I quit my day job, because I knew I wanted to have a platform for education. But now it's grown into like people's comfort channels. Like having somebody say like, I listen to your channel to fall asleep. That is like the highest compliment I feel like I've ever heard. I'm like, oh my God. Cause I have those channels. Like I interact with YouTube in that way. And I have those favorite places that I go over and over again. And to have become that for somebody else, it's a huge motivator, and it really permeates like every other part of my business.
Yeah. My gosh, Toni, I feel like I could talk to you for another like 3 hours, but we gotta wrap this up. But Toni, there's so much. This was so great. I just love learning more about you and your business and your YouTube channel. For people that aren't familiar with you and your content and what you do, where can they find you?
Sure. So the easiest way to find me is going to be on YouTube at TL Yarn Crafts, but you can also find me at TL Yarn Crafts everywhere else: Pinterest, Instagram, my website, tlyarncrafts.com, and then that'll get you to all the other platforms. You can also check out the Yarn Hive community if you're looking for a membership. And if you really want to learn TL Yarn Crafts, you can get my book, The Tunisian Crochet Handbook, which is available on my website as well.
Amazing. I'll have I'll put all the links in the description for people. So, well, Toni, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Erika. Thank you so much for the invitation. It has been a pleasure. And you're absolutely right. We could talk forever. So hopefully we have a chance to chat again.
Yes, I would love that. Bye.
Bye.